Hey, you hold on a second.
Me? What's going on, officer?
I need you to step away from the vehicle. We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area.
Suspicious activity? I'm getting gas. What are you
Sir, don't get an attitude with me. Just step over here.
An attitude?
I'm literally just filling up my car.
At 38, Agent Marcus Ellis had never been late to a briefing, never missed a beat, never underestimated the stakes of his job. A decorated FBI agent, known for precision, dedication, and integrity. But on a Tuesday evening in a small, dimly lit gas station in suburban Georgia, none of that mattered. A uniformed officer approached him with suspicion, eyes narrowing at the sight of his black skin and the expensive car he had pulled up in. A routine stop? Not for Marcus, not this night. "You don't belong here," the officer muttered under his breath, a statement that would unravel into a public spectacle, a threat to his career, and a glaring example of systemic bias. Before we continue, what city are you watching from? If this is your first time listening, support the channel by liking and subscribing. Stories like this need to be told, and with your help, we can make sure these events don't go unheard. Within moments, the simple act of filling his car with gas would become a confrontation recorded on a body cam, replayed endlessly online and dissected by national news outlets. Marcus would walk away, not just shaken, but questioning the very system he had sworn to protect. Marcus Ellis was born in Atlanta, Georgia, in a neighborhood where ambition had to be louder than circumstance. From a young age, he had one mantra: excellence is non-negotiable. At Morehouse College, he graduated summa cum laude, a rarity even among the city's elite. Then came the FBI Academy in Quantico, where only the top 2% earned recognition as tactical specialists. He had solved financial fraud rings that spanned 3 states, brought down violent gangs, and was quietly mentoring young recruits who saw him as both a role model and a warning. Work harder than anyone else because the world won't give you the benefit of the doubt. At the Bureau, he was known for precision. Every report bulletproof, every operation meticulously planned. But outside in civilian spaces, Marcus's credentials were invisible. To most, he was just a black man, a fact that would soon collide with assumption in a way that threatened to upend everything he had built. He drove a sleek black sedan, his FBI badge hidden under a suit jacket, keys to a secure home in his pocket, and a mind trained to anticipate danger before it arrived. Excellence had always protected him until it didn't. The gas station sat at the edge of a sleepy suburban strip mall. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed above the pumps. The smell of gasoline mixed with faint exhaust fumes, an acrid reminder that this place had seen its share of late-night mischief. It was Tuesday evening. Most locals were home, windows closed against the winter chill. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee from the small diner across the street. Security cameras perched at every corner, their lenses cold and impassive. Marcus pulled up to pump 3, the engine's low hum fading as he stepped out. His badge remained tucked beneath his jacket, his credentials invisible to anyone who didn't know him personally. The officer arrived moments later, a man in his mid-30s, clean-cut, starched uniform, hands on his belt. He scanned the scene like a hawk, not the station, not the pumps, Marcus. Somewhere in his mind, the officer had already drawn conclusions. Marcus was out of place, his car too expensive, his skin too dark, his demeanor too calm. The officer had never seen the man before, but that didn't matter, not tonight, not here. Marcus noticed the stare but continued filling his tank. Routine, procedural, nothing unusual. Yet in the silence of that winter evening, tension rippled, the kind that makes ordinary spaces feel like a trial waiting to happen. "Evening, sir," the officer said. The voice was polite, too polite. Beneath it lurked suspicion, judgment, authority unearned in this moment. "Evening," Marcus replied, stepping back from the pump, glancing at the digital display showing the rising total. "You live around here?" the officer asked, shifting his weight, eyes flicking to Marcus's ID card briefly visible in the wallet. "Yes, I do. Just filling up," Marcus answered calmly, masking the annoyance that flared inside. The officer's hand drifted toward his radio, not aggressively, not yet, but the subtle motion carried a threat. "License and registration," the officer said, tone sharpened. Marcus complied, producing his documents. The officer studied them, squinting as if the words themselves might lie. "You work around here?" the officer asked again, the words laced with doubt. "I do." "FBI," Marcus said. The badge remained hidden, his voice steady, authoritative, a declaration of truth. The officer laughed, an incredulous, sharp sound. "Right, FBI. Sure." The disbelief was tangible. Marcus could feel it in the air, in the flicker of the fluorescent lights, in the hum of the pumps. Seconds stretched into minutes. The officer questioned every movement, checked the license again, asked questions that had no relevance to the situation. Nearby patrons noticed the tension. An old man at pump 4 glanced over, eyebrows raised. A teenage clerk paused behind the counter, sensing the unspoken hostility. Marcus tried to reason, to de-escalate. "I'm authorized to be here. I'm just filling my car. There's no issue." The officer ignored him, proceeding as if Marcus's words carried no weight. Every gesture of compliance only seemed to feed suspicion. Every explanation met with scrutiny. And then it happened, the moment when absurdity crossed into injustice. The officer radioed in Marcus's information, not because he suspected criminal activity, not because there was a threat, but because he assumed guilt, because Marcus looked like someone who didn't belong here. The pump hissed, the gas filling the tank. The fluorescent lights flickered again. Time slowed. Marcus felt the weight of decades of bias pressing down in these seconds, invisible to anyone but him. A confrontation born of misunderstanding? Yes, but more than that, it was a collision of authority, race, and assumption that would have consequences far beyond a suburban gas station. The night air thickened. Each second dragged like a weight. Marcus remained calm, hands visible, but inside, frustration burned. "Step out of the car," the officer commanded, voice low but authoritative. Marcus complied, every movement measured, deliberate. He had trained for hostile situations, yet never imagined he'd be the subject of suspicion simply for being black. "What's in your trunk?" the officer asked, tone clipped. "My personal belongings, work equipment," Marcus replied. The answer was truthful, logical, yet it was met with doubt, with an edge of accusation. The officer's eyes narrowed. "FBI, huh? Show me some ID." Marcus reached for his badge. The officer waved him off. "Not yet. I need to verify your story first." It was a procedural catch-22. Comply fully, and you're still not believed. Hesitate, and you're presumed guilty. Nearby, the pumps hissed. Gas spilled faintly onto the concrete. A cold wind swept through, tugging at Marcus's jacket. The fluorescent lights above flickered again, shadows dancing across the scene like spectators at a silent trial. "Why are you always so nervous around me?" the officer asked, smirking. "You know, most people aren't this tense when filling up their tank." Marcus swallowed the rising anger. Every word, every step had been lawful, professional. Yet he was being treated as a suspect, not an agent of the law. "Sir, I assure you I'm complying. There is no threat here," Marcus said. Calm, firm, authoritative. The officer ignored him, calling for backup. His tone had shifted from suspicion to a quiet vindictiveness, a taste for control he didn't earn. The absurdity had escalated into humiliation. Marcus had become a spectacle. A passing motorist slowed, sensing the tension. The teenage clerk peeked from the office doorway. The camera above the pumps captured everything, every doubt, every assumption, every unearned accusation. Minutes felt like hours. Marcus knew the situation could spiral. He needed to act, but carefully. One wrong move, and this simple stop could turn catastrophic. Then Marcus made his move. With deliberate calm, he opened his jacket. The badge gleamed in the fluorescent light. The officer's smirk faltered. FBI. Full credentials. Now, do you see who you're dealing with? Marcus asked, voice steady, unwavering. The officer froze. For a moment, time hung suspended. His face shifted from authority to disbelief, then to embarrassment. Backup officers arrived, but by then the dynamic had changed. Marcus was no longer the subject of suspicion. He was the authority. The tables had turned. I didn't realize, the original officer stammered, avoiding eye contact. His tone carried a mix of shame and defensiveness, a mask failing under the weight of undeniable truth. Marcus remained calm, collected. His experience had taught him that humiliation was inevitable in these moments, but integrity, truth, was irreversible. The gas station lights flickered once more, cold and buzzing. The wind outside carried the distant hum of tires on asphalt. Witnesses had seen the interaction. The body language of the officer betrayed his discomfort, a silent acknowledgement that the power he had assumed was now gone. Yet the incident was far from over. Though Marcus had revealed the truth, the officer's assumptions had been recorded. Every doubt, every accusation, every misjudgment captured on camera. And when it went public, the world would see not just the humiliation of one officer, but the systemic bias that allowed it to happen in the first place. The body cam captured every second. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The hiss of the pump, the officer's incredulous glance at Marcus's badge, every detail, every micro-expression, every ounce of tension laid bare. The teenage clerk had been filming discreetly on her phone, shaking hands, betraying the adrenaline of witnessing injustice firsthand. By the time Marcus drove away, both recordings had been uploaded to social media by a concerned bystander. Views climbed exponentially within hours, thousands, tens of thousands. Comments poured in, shock, anger, disbelief, outrage. News outlets picked it up. The headline flashed, Black FBI agent racially profiled at Georgia gas station, video goes viral. For Marcus, it was surreal. His credentials had finally silenced the officer in real time, but the recordings amplified the injustice instead of burying it. The world now saw what he had endured. A law enforcement officer assuming guilt solely based on skin color. Experts weighed in. Legal analysts dissected the footage. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Social media erupted with questions. Why is this still happening in 2026? How many others experience this daily? The body cam and citizen footage didn't just tell the story, they forced the narrative into the public sphere. Evidence had become a weapon against assumption, bias, and complacency. The local police department issued a statement within 24 hours. We are reviewing the incident and conducting an internal investigation. The officer in question was placed on administrative leave. His colleagues avoided eye contact in the press photos, aware that their institution had been publicly shamed. Marcus filed a formal complaint. The FBI demanded a full report. Civil rights lawyers reached out, offering support. Lawsuits were discussed, settlements floated. Early reports suggested potential payouts exceeding $200,000, not just for Marcus personally, but as a deterrent to systemic bias. Policy revisions were announced. Mandatory implicit bias training for all officers, new reporting requirements for stops involving race, and the introduction of more transparent body cam usage. The incident became a case study in systemic failures, showing how even law enforcement officers could misapply authority. Public outrage simmered into protests, local news coverage, and national debate. Commentators on television discussed the power of social media as accountability. Yet many asked, why does it always take a viral video to spark action? The consequences weren't just personal, they were institutional. The city, the department, even the FBI's public image were forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Bias had cost credibility, trust, and money. Bias had turned a routine stop into a national conversation about race, authority, and justice. And yet, despite the outrage, Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. Institutional fallout could change policy, but it couldn't erase the lingering question. How many times would assumptions like this go unrecorded, unpunished, invisible to the world? What does this incident reveal? On the surface, it's simple: a man, a uniform, a mistaken assumption. But dig deeper. This was a collision between authority and identity, a stark reminder that credentials alone cannot shield you from bias. Marcus Ellis was a decorated FBI agent, an emblem of law, order, and justice. Yet, in a dimly lit suburban gas station, those very credentials were invisible. Why? Because society still interprets skin color before experience. Because implicit bias shapes perception faster than truth can assert itself. Ask yourself, how often do we trust authority to act fairly when its judgment is clouded by prejudice? How many individuals face Marcuse's experience every day without a badge, without an audience, without recourse? The public footage forced the narrative into the open. But what about the countless moments that go unrecorded? The encounters that leave no trace, no viral video, no social media outrage? The systemic problem remains. Policing is not just about enforcing laws. It's about who gets to be seen as credible, trustworthy, human. And there is irony here. The very institution Marcus represented, trained to investigate crime and uphold justice, could not protect him from being criminalized in a single moment of assumption. The badge revealed truth, yes, but truth only matters if it is witnessed. This isn't just a story about one man, one officer, one gas station. It is a story about society's unfinished work, equality, accountability, and the uncomfortable examination of our own prejudices. Marcus drove away that night, leaving the gas station behind, but the encounter lingered. The fluorescent lights, the hiss of the pump, the officer's incredulous stare, they all stayed with him. So did the questions. What if the camera had been off? What if no witnesses were present? What if the viral video never existed? Would justice still have prevailed, or would bias have triumphed again? And the question now sits with us, the audience. How many more Marcus Ellises are out there, subjected to suspicion simply for existing in spaces where they belong? How many confrontations go unseen, unrecorded, and unresolved? The answer is uncomfortable, but it is real, and it demands reckoning. Before we close, remember, incidents like these are not isolated. They are systemic, they are urgent, they are ongoing. If you found this story compelling, share it, discuss it, comment below, support the channel. Because stories like Marcus Ellis's need to be heard, and with your help, we can make sure these events don't fade into silence. The gas station is quiet now, but the injustice echoes. And the question remains, who will be the next witness, and what will they do when history repeats itself?